business operators at the subchapter, S-corps, LLCs. You're going to ruin this economy and more job losses by raising those taxes.
Well, I just would ask the gentleman, I'd yield for an answer whether he thinks Bain Capital is a small business.
I'm not talking about Bain Capital.
Well, yes,
you say raise taxes on individuals. I'm talking about personal income tax rate, and that's the top two brackets.
I'm reclaiming my time.
Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. West, you should, when Mr. Romney and Mr. Ryan and all our Republican colleagues cite those figures about pass-throughs, that includes companies like Bain Capital. It also includes some Fortune 100 companies. The President has put forward a proposal that says let's act right now to extend tax relief to 98% of the American people and 97% of all pass-through businesses. It's true, we don't think that Bain Capital needs a big additional tax break when we've got a big deficit that we should deal with in what we think should be a balanced way. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves his time, and all members are advised that they will direct their comments through the chair, and the gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
And now, at this time, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, our leader.
The gentleman from Virginia, recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the gentleman from New Jersey and commend the gentleman from Florida on bringing this bill forward. Madam Speaker, the bill before us is not about tax rates, because I think that issue will be resolved one way or another here shortly in this election, because we know that there's a difference between the two sides. Unfortunately, our counterparts on the other side of the aisle think it's very important in this tough economy to raise taxes. We don't believe that, Madam Speaker. But the bill before us simply asks the President to give us his plan for replacing the first year of cuts in the sequester. It has been 126 days since we passed our plan to responsibly replace the sequester with cuts that maintain our fiscal discipline. Our plan controls unchecked government spending and reduces wasteful and duplicative programs. But still, there has been no action and no proposal coming from the other side of the Capitol, coming from the other side of the aisle. It has been 126 days since the President said he would veto our plan, but he has failed to put forward an alternative. And the letter that some of us Republican leaders wrote on July 14th asking the President to engage with us to come and find a bipartisan solution to the sequestration, that letter has gone unanswered. Madam Speaker, inaction carries a very high risk. Instability and unprecedented political transformation throughout the Middle East, a civil war in Syria, Iran's dogged pursuit of nuclear weapons and support for terrorism, as well as challenges posed by rising China and geostrategic shifts in the Asia-Pacific, make maintaining American military preeminence as important as ever. And the deadly and tragic attacks on Ambassador Chris Stevens, Foreign Service Information Management Officer Sean Smith, and 2 other Americans at our consulate in Benghazi, Libya, make clear that Islamic extremist terrorism remains a tremendous threat to the Middle East, the United States, and the international community. If the cuts in the sequester go forward, they will fundamentally weaken our current and long-term national security and our ability to meet these challenges we're facing. Implementing these cuts will mean reductions in shipbuilding, aircraft, and missiles, shrinking our current force to levels not seen since before World War II. And that means fewer defense-related jobs. According to a study conducted by the Aerospace Industries Association, the job losses will reach 2 million. And let me put that in perspective. The economy added less than 100,000 jobs last month. Worse, more people dropped out of the labor force than were added to it. Under the sequester, unemployment would soar from its current level up to 9%, setting back any progress the economy has made. According to the same study, the jobs of more than 200,000 Virginians, my own state, are on the line. A small business in my district called Produce Source Partners, which provides fresh food to troops at military bases, says the sequester threatens the jobs of their 200 employees. Another small company in Virginia, High Test Laboratories, could be forced to reduce their staff by as much as 30%. Removing these jobs from the community will shrink the local economy and set back an already underutilized business zone. That same predicament faces hundreds of hardworking men and women in towns from here to California. Madam Speaker, we are here today asking the President simply to come forward with a plan. We are here today because the minority has failed to work with us to find a solution to prevent these cuts that would hollow out our military and result in massive layoffs. Madam Speaker, the House will act. Now we need leadership, Mr. President, and I yield back.
Majority Leader, the gentleman from Virginia, yields back his time. The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's hard to know where to begin because I hope everyone was listening very carefully that if we allow these spending cuts to take place, we will lose hundreds of thousands of jobs in Virginia alone, thousands of jobs around the country. You know, I've heard a lot of complaints from our Republican colleagues about the recovery bill and the fact that we had to do some emergency spending to prevent the loss of millions of jobs. And you know what? That worked. And here are Republican colleagues here today saying that we've got to make sure the spending cuts don't take place because if we do, it will result in a lot of lost jobs. Well, you know what? It takes jobs to build an aircraft carrier, absolutely. It also creates jobs when you invest in trying to repair and modernize our roads and our bridges and our infrastructure. The President submitted a jobs bill more than a year ago to this House to do exactly that. Let's invest more in modernizing our infrastructure. We haven't had a single vote on the President's jobs bill. So I'm really glad to hear our Republican colleagues say that if we make these kind of cuts, it's going to result in lost jobs. Because you know what? You are right about that. And the debate today is not about whether we should prevent the sequester from taking place. As I said, we should. It's how we do that. And I heard again from the Republican leader, the President doesn't have a plan. He has a plan. They just don't like his plan. They don't like his plan because it takes a balanced approach. It says, you know what? In addition to cuts, we should also ask people who make more than $1 million a year to contribute a little more to reducing our national deficit and preventing the sequester. We should ask big oil companies to give up their taxpayer subsidies. So the question, Madam Speaker, is not whether we replace the sequester. There are lots of plans I've already talked about. One in my hand, I offered it yesterday. Can't get a vote on it today. The issue is not whether, it's how. We should take a balanced approach. And I yield now 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Schwartz.
Gentlelady from Pennsylvania, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I am pleased to participate in this debate in some ways, although I do have to say that this is not really the kind of honest debate that we need to be having. We should be having a conversation. We should have been having a conversation well before now about how we would avoid sequester and do it in a bipartisan way, to do it in a balanced way. That is not what is happening right now. It is what we're seeing is a Republican plan without that kind of conversation, without that kind of willingness to find common ground or a balanced approach. The federal budget is about choices, and the choices we make matter. Do we choose to protect our seniors, to grow the middle class, to make smart investments in our economy, to be able to reach agreement on deficit reduction in a way that is fair to the American people, or not? Republicans have made their choices, their priorities, and their values very clear. Once again, they are wasting America's time playing politics instead of working to find that common ground. Sequestration was put in place to push us, to force us in Congress to work together on a bipartisan, balanced approach to deficit reduction. We knew it would be tough. We all knew we would not want to implement sequester, that would be difficult. But we put on the table what needed to get done if we couldn't have that kind of conversation. And we have not yet seen the Republican leadership in the House be willing to engage that kind of serious deficit reduction conversation that takes a balanced balanced approach respects our obligation to Americans and our future. Today's legislation does not move us any closer to achieving the goal of deficit reduction done in a balanced way, in a fair way, in a real way. We know we must reduce the nation's deficit in a balanced and fiscally responsible manner. We've seen every bipartisan independent commission tell us that. It means that, and they've told us, and we know, that we have to take some hard hits and spending cuts, that we have to require greater efficiency and greater effectiveness from all sectors of government, that we must do this with a balance with increased revenue. It cannot be done without it. In order to build economic growth in our nation, we need to do all of this. Deficit reduction means spending cuts, means increased revenue. It means a balanced approach if we're going to grow the economy for now and the future. Republicans in Congress have rejected this balanced approach, and in doing so, they have made it clear that they are not serious about deficit reduction. They are, in fact, willing to add $800 billion to our deficit with tax breaks for the wealthiest. That's what this legislation does today. They are adding $2 trillion more in defense spending, more than the Pentagon has said it needs to keep us safe and defend our nation. And they are willing to do this at the expense of our middle class, our seniors, and our economic recovery. The Republican approach to replacing the sequester means that we will be less prepared to compete in the 21st century economy. Now is not the time to make drastic cuts in transportation and infrastructure, in innovation and clean energy, or in education and health care. And that's what this would do. The Republican plan creates false and unfair choices for the American people. Let's get serious, let's have some real solutions, and let's move forward on deficit reduction and economic growth for the American people.
Gentlelady's time's expired. And the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd now like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from California who recognizes that it is really not a balanced plan to say that we want to raise $3 on every American in taxes and only $1 in spending reductions. And it is not a balanced plan to say that we want to pick and choose winners and losers when it comes to the tax code reform. The gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
Gentleman from California recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. And I rise in strong support of the National Security and Jobs Protection Act offered by Mr. West from Florida. I have the privilege of serving on the Armed Services Committee with him, and I thank him for his leadership in bringing this important bill forward at this time. It boggles my mind, Madam Speaker, that we are standing here ready to wipe out our national defense at a time when we turn on the TV in the morning and see the Middle East erupting, when we see Iran moving forward on their plans to achieve a nuclear weapon, when we see China increasing their defense spending while we're cutting ours. People need to understand that we have cut $487 billion starting October 1st over the next 10 years out of our defense. And on top of that, we have added this problem of sequestration, which adds another $600 billion over the next 10 years starting January 2nd. The first $487 billion, some thought was put into, and plans. Even though we had to adjust our strategy that we've had since World War II, we've had to cut back. We know that we won't be able to carry out the missions that we've been called on to do in the future, but we will be able to survive according to our military leaders. But the sequestration, we held 5 hearings last September with all of our former military leaders, our current military leaders, former chairmen and secretaries of these committees, and to a man, every single one said that the sequestration would hollow out and wipe out our national defense. We would take the Navy back to the size it was in World War I, the armed forces, the ground forces back to the size they were in 1940, and the Air Force back to the smallest it's been since it was created. How does anybody think that, given these times, that is not a stupid thing to be doing? And the way the sequestration would take effect is you just pull out the budget and take a percentage. The administration hasn't told us yet what percentage. It's probably going to be about 15–20% off of every single line item. So mowing the lawn at Fort Dix will have the same priority as ammunition for the troops in Afghanistan. How can anybody think that that is a smart idea? You know, that we have a Constitution of the United States, and it tells us how we should operate here in this Congress. And it says one body passes a bill, the other body passes a bill, a conference is formed, you work out your differences, you take it back for final passage and send it to the President to be signed into law. The House has acted. We took tough votes. We accomplished our objective of paying for the first year of sequestration, not just the defense cuts, but all of the cuts across the board to move it back, pay for the first year, move it back into a time where we're less stressful with the election upon us, where we could do it in a less political environment, and the Senate hasn't acted. In 126 days, they haven't acted. We're used to that because, excuse me, the other body hasn't acted. But, you know, Madam Speaker, all they have to do, they don't like our bill, I understand that. All they have to do is pass another bill, get it to conference, and then we'll work out the differences. We accomplished ours through cuts. They can accomplish theirs through increasing taxes, and then we can work out a difference. But there's all the gentleman on the other side says is they presented a plan and we don't like their plan. Well, a plan is nothing. What they have to do is pass a bill. Show us, get the votes, pass a bill, and then go to the conference. It's in the Constitution. That's how we operate. And it's important enough that we should all act like adults and follow the Constitution and get it done. Our nation, our security depends on it. And we don't have much time left to do it. Madam Speaker, I think it's very important that we pass this bill. I encourage my colleagues to vote for it. Let's act like adults. Let's earn our salaries here. Let's get this job done. I yield back.
Gentleman from California yields back his time. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I agree with the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. We should act like adults. So we agree that the sequester cuts are done in a stupid meat-axe way. We also agree with what the chairman of the Armed Services Committee said last October when, if it came to choosing between allowing all the terrible consequences that he rightly spoke about and taking a balanced approach to deficit reduction, which included some additional revenue, he would accept the balanced approach. Now, we heard our colleagues say that this was—
Would the gentleman yield?
Mr. Chairman, not right now. I'll yield for a very quick question.
You presented something that I said when I was asked after a speech what I would do given two bad choices, okay? But you don't have anything on the floor yet. You haven't passed a bill, so I don't even have the opportunity to vote for increased taxes because you haven't passed a bill yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we wanted to give you that opportunity yesterday, which is why I went to the House Rules Committee with this substitute, which is in my hand, Mr. Chairman, that said you can replace the sequester right away if you're willing to cut some big ag subsidies, which I thought we were all agreed that we could do, but also get rid of some of the subsidies for the big oil companies, not some of the smaller producers, the big five, and you ask folks over $1 million to pay the same effective rate that people who work for them pay. And I agree with what you said last October, which is that it's more important to prevent the kind of cuts that we're talking about here today to defense and non-defense than it is to protect tax breaks for big oil companies. Mr. Chairman, I wanted a vote. We wanted a vote. If the Rules Committee will allow us a vote, you can do it right now. In fact, the thing I have in my hand, the substitute, if we passed it, would actually replace the sequester. The resolution on the floor doesn't replace the sequester, even if it goes to the White House. I now yield 3 minutes to the distinguished ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Levin.
And the gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 3 minutes.
Well, I've now been here 30 years, 26 on the Ways and Means Committee. So why are we at this point of serious impasse? I think a major reason is that the radical right has taken over House Republicans. Balance is considered surrender. Compromise is considered retreat. Indeed, since the passage of the Budget Control Act in August of 2011, the Republicans have made sequestration even more likely. Before August of last year, the Republican position was no new revenues. The Bush tax cuts for the very wealthy were untouchable. But in their budget passed this March, the Republicans not only said that the Bush tax cuts for the wealthy must continue, but also they should be expanded. They are doubling down on a policy of tax cuts for the wealthiest, while annual income stagnation continues for the middle class, and we have the worst income inequality in generations. So in a word, they went from bad to worse, furthering the likelihood of sequestration. Under the Ryan budget and the so-called tax reform fast-track bill they passed last month, a recent analysis concluded that the average millionaire would lock in an average tax cut of $330,000, while the average person making less than $200,000 would see their taxes rise by $4,500. I support tax reform, but so far Republicans have refused to say which policies they would eliminate to pay for it. It's been dodge and deception. Half of the money in individual income tax expenditures is in the lowest rates for capital gains and dividends, and they propose to cut those rates even further, Mr. Ryan down to zero on capital gains. And most of those benefits go to those making over $1 million. But most of the other major tax expenditures, mortgage interest, health insurance, education benefits that would have to be decimated are mainly middle-class benefits. This bill ignores the fact that the President put forward a balanced deficit reduction package over a year ago that would have cut the deficit by $4 trillion over 10 years. And I close by emphasizing the word balanced. Balanced. Essentially, the Republican Party that I've known over the years has become very deeply imbalanced in terms of the mainstream of America.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
I thank the Madam Speaker, and at this time I'd like to yield to another gentleman from California, this time for 2 minutes, who understands that we are in fact presenting a balanced approach in as much as we present the options to either pass this legislation that the House already did or an alternative. The gentleman from California.
Gentleman from California, recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from yielding. And you know, I had made some notes I was going to say, but I'm now going to go off script as the gentleman from Maryland, who I genuinely like and respect, made some comments to which I feel I must respond. The gentleman has referred to, as the President does often, to additional taxes on domestic energy, for which they use the pejorative big oil, and taxes on job creators, for which they are creating a pejorative the rich, and that these two things will solve all ills. Well, by my count, when we did the budget this year in the Budget Committee, the Democrats used those two taxes to pay for 7, by my count, different items of spending. Now, let me explain what that's like. It's like this. Here is $1. This is $1, a single dollar. If I go into a store and spend it and buy these breath mints, the dollar will be gone and I will have the breath mints. I cannot now take this dollar into 6 more stores and buy 6 more bits of breath mints because the dollar is gone. I spent it. So you cannot use the same tax increases to pay for everything that are multiple times what those tax increases were able to raise. Now, I understand. This is a political talking point. I get it. Look, we all do those. I get it. But this is not a game. We saw this week with the reprehensible assassination of Ambassador Stevens that our national defense is not a game, and it is definitely not a game now, and our economy is not a game, as millions of people who are out of work can attest. This is a real proposal. We're asking the President for a real proposal and not a political talking point, and we need to solve this problem. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my friend from California for those comments. And I would just say this. I have in my hand a proposal, a substitute amendment. If we'd passed it, it would prevent the sequester from taking place on defense and non-defense in a balanced way. You spend these things one time to get rid of the sequester. And as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee said, he wished he had an opportunity to vote on something like this, and I say to him, I wish the Rules Committee had given us all that opportunity. With that, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished Democratic whip, Mr. Hoyer.
I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Gentleman.
I tell my friend from California, the gentleman from California whose dollar was at issue here, the gentleman from California, I will tell you with all due respect and affection, your party over the last 10 years took that dollar and they bought those mints. And they went to the 6 subsequent stores and they gave them a credit card for the next mints they bought. It's time to pay the bill.
Will the gentleman yield?
I don't have a very short time, but I wanted to make that point that you kept buying mints. You just didn't keep paying. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, excuse me, this bill is another instance of this Republicans caucus walking away from its responsibility. The budget sequester was never intended to be a solution in and of itself. It was meant to be the blunt instrument to force compromise. Unfortunately, compromise is a dirty word around here in some quarters. To lay out conditions, as this bill does, requiring one side to concede before negotiations even begin, while solving only part of the problem, disregards sequestration's fundamental purpose, to be equally unacceptable to both sides that it forces compromise. This bill, which I strongly oppose, essentially says, let's pretend. Let's pretend we don't have a deficit challenge. It says, let's pretend that we can solve our problems by cutting domestic spending alone. No rational human being believes that's the case. No cuts to Republicans' favorite programs. No elimination of tax loopholes for oil companies or anybody else. No increases in revenue by asking the wealthiest to contribute a little more to setting our country on a sound path. We're collecting the lowest amount of revenues we've collected in 70 years in this country. And we haven't cut spending. And we increased spending in the last administration very substantially. By the way, a greater percentage than this administration has increased the deficits. 86% versus 41%. Check the figures. What we need, Madam Speaker, is pragmatism, principle, and serious governing. We need to be honest with the American people. Both bipartisan commissions that explored this issue concluded that the best solution is a balanced approach that addresses revenues, entitlements, and targeted cuts to domestic and defense spending. To achieve such a balanced solution, we need something that is sorely lacking in this House: courage and a willingness to compromise, to come together, to reason together, and to make tough decisions together. Sequester is the direct result of Republican policies and is a part of the Republican strategy to cut spending. You keep saying, well, this is not a Democratic policy. It's an irrational policy. But it's in your bills and in your rules. Now, instead of working with Democrats to turn off the sequester, Republicans are trying to paint the sequester as a Democratic initiative. That is false, untrue. The Republican cut, cap, and balance. I ask for one additional minute, Mr. Chairman.
I yield the gentleman another minute.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 more minute.
The Republican cut, cap, and balance bill enforces its cuts and its caps. How? Through sequestration. That's what you voted for. After the agreement was reached on the Budget Control Act that put the sequester in place, Speaker Boehner said, I got 98% of what I wanted. Now our Republican colleagues are attempting to undo the sequester in a way that lets them off the hook politically, but puts America at risk financially. Democrats have an alternative. Mr. Van Hollen just spoke of it, that would repeal the sequester for a year by asking that the wealthiest in our country, why? Because they can help a little more. Not because they're bad. God bless them. And by the way, we're most of those as well, folks. I hope my friends on the other side of the aisle, who I know are as deeply concerned about our deficits and debt as I am, will join Democrats in defeating this bill and sending a message that only by working together can we find the solutions we need. America expects that of us. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
Madam Speaker, at this time I would like to yield to the gentleman from Oklahoma. 3 minutes.
Gentleman from Oklahoma, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let's review. We have $16 trillion in debt, and it's climbing every single day. We have no budget from the Senate for the last 3 years. The President's budget got exactly 0 votes in the House and in the Senate. And the federal government has dramatically increased spending, which has led to this spending-driven crisis. Let me show you what I mean by that. 5 years ago, in 2007, Federal Treasury received in $2.5 trillion in revenue, the same amount that's estimated to come in this year in revenue. $2.5 trillion 5 years ago, $2.5 trillion now. 5 years ago, total spent by the federal government, $2.7 trillion, now $3.7 trillion. That almost looks like a $1 trillion difference in spending, which equals the same amount as our deficit. It's amazing to me. When we process through this, the problem is crystal clear. It's just the solution that seems to evade us in this process. Now, some would say, tell you what we need to do. We've increased spending $1 trillion. Let's just increase taxes as well, and that'll solve the issue. I would say, why are we spending money we don't have? Last summer, we agreed that we would cut some spending and put a group of people together in a room and let them work out a plan to find $1 trillion in cuts. The backup, the emergency backup plan, was that we would cut across the board if a solution wasn't found. 10% for security, 8% for everything else. Now, no one wants across-the-board cuts that are that huge. A 1% cut in agencies would be no big deal. I can't imagine any agency could handle 1%. 2%, no big deal, maybe even 3%. But you start to climb up and it really begins to cut into some agencies that are actually very efficient. Other agencies, you could do a 50% cut and it'd be fine. The problem is an across-the-board cut becomes a very big issue for us. Treating every line item the same is a mistake. Every part is not the same in our budget. Let me give you an example. At my house, on a Saturday afternoon, I'll open up a Dr. Pepper can at my house, and my very cute redheaded 12-year-old daughter will walk up and say, Daddy, can we split that? I will almost always smile at her and say, sure. I'll take the liquid, you take the can, we'll split it even. To which she says to me, that's not really fair. But it again comes back to the same point. Not all parts are the same. If we do across-the-board cuts in every area, that is not the best way to do it. Now, I guarantee you, you allow this House to go item by item through this budget, we will find $100 billion in cuts next year. I guarantee you. But doing it across the board cuts into FBI, it cuts into our defense, it cuts into Border Patrol, it cuts into the basics and the heart of what we're doing, and we cannot do that. The House passed a very specific plan for dealing with this last May. It is complete for us. Now it's time for the Senate to actually do their job, and it's time for the President to send that over to us. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Maryland.
I reserve, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from New Jersey.
And, Madam Speaker, at this time, I believe to our third gentleman from California. Over here. Gentleman from California, 4 minutes is recognized.
Gentleman from California for 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'd fool you. Go to the left. That fools a lot of people. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support, obviously, of H.R. 6365, the National Security and Job Protection Act. Do we need any more evidence that recent events in Egypt and Libya to oppose these devastating cuts that would do onto our national security? I don't think so. As sequestration occurs, it would cut the military to its smallest size since before World War II. All the while, we're still a nation at war in Afghanistan, facing unrest and aggression in the Middle East, increased threats from Iran, China, and North Korea. In addition to the 10% cut to defense our domestic programs would have, such as health, science, research, education, border security, that will face an additional 8% cut. In May, this House passed the only plan that's been presented thus far to prevent and replace sequestration. last May by providing and making common-sense reforms to our fast-growing government that's on autopilot spending programs and to avert the spending-driven economic crisis that's before us. Well, we've seen no signs of leadership from the White House or the Senate, but the House will act again today with H.R. 6365, the National Security and Job Protection Act. The House will lead where others have not. This legislation sends a clear statement that the House is ready to carry out our budgetary responsibilities. We just need willing partners. The President, the Senate, House Republicans and Democrats. We all agree on a common goal: replace the sequester to protect important domestic programs, our fragile economy, our national security, and our troops. This bill is a path to that solution. Make no mistake, if sequestration goes into effect, America will compromise a legacy of superiority on the land, on the sea, and in the air to send and potentially send our economy spiraling back into a recession. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this bill, and I would hope that we could pass this with a large number and get on with it. And with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Maryland.
I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished Democratic leader, the gentlelady from California, Ms. Pelosi.
Minority Leader is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we come to the floor this afternoon to talk about this sequester issue, the clock is ticking. And every moment we delay in dealing with the budget issue is a moment of time that does not increase confidence in our economy, does not bring more certainty to our economic situation, and does not reduce the deficit. I heard the previous speaker say that this legislation that is on the floor would end sequestration. It does not. And that is one of the major differences between it and the Democratic proposal put forth by Mr. Van Hollen. Unfortunately, afraid of debate on the floor, the Rules Committee did not allow the Republicans to allow Mr. Van Hollen's proposal to come to the floor today so that we could have a vote on it. But even with that, we can have a debate on it. And the debate is about fairness, it's about balance, it's about living up to our responsibilities, it's about saying, yes, we all have to compromise, there will be cuts, we need revenue, we want growth. That's what Mr. Van Hollen's proposal does. It does indeed replace the sequestration. It is a better plan. It actually does end sequestration through a mix of cuts in revenues, as I mentioned. The reason we have a problem here is because our Republican colleagues have refused to have 1 red cent from the wealthiest people in our country contribute to resolving this fiscal crisis, this budget crisis. Not 1 red cent. If they cared as much about defense as they say, 1 year ago they would have agreed to a balanced and a plan with fairness and balance, where we would have growth on the table and make decisions about revenue and about cuts to produce growth and not go to a situation that called for across-the-board cuts in defense and in our domestic budget. This is really silly. It's really silly. It's not serious. It's a charade, this bill that they have on the floor today. It just keeps making matters worse as the clock keeps ticking. So I urge my colleagues to reject this mirage of a bill that poses as a suggestion and support instead ideas that are being advanced by Mr. Van Hollen. I don't like everything about it. I think we've cut over $1 trillion. That's how we got through last year, all cuts, no revenue. But if you need only to see how we differ, just look at the Ryan-Romney Republican budget. Their blueprint says we're going to end Medicare, we're going to make seniors pay $6,000 more as we end Medicare, and we're going to give tax cuts to the wealthiest people in our country. That's not fair, that's not balanced, but that is what would happen if the Republican bill were to become law. It would enact the Ryan bill. So I urge my colleagues to think very seriously about this, because people sent us here to find solutions. We must resolve this. When the Speaker of the House says, I'm not confident we can do this, we are confident we can do anything we set our minds to. And we certainly have to be confident that we can honor our responsibilities to the American people. So we all have to go to the table willing to yield, willing to compromise. We've had to do it with President Bush Sr., with President Bush on his recovery package for our country. Democrats cooperated with both those presidents when we were in the majority. Why is it that the Republicans in the House see no reason to compromise, even at the risk of the full faith and credit of the United States of America, even at the expense of the health of our economy, even at the expense of jobs for the American people? Vote no on this mirage. Support what Mr. Van Hollen is putting forth. Let's get moving, because the clock is ticking. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 4 minutes. South Carolina for 4 minutes.
Gentleman from South Carolina, recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from New York for that. No, I'm sorry. The gentleman from New Jersey. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I saw the gentleman from Maryland. Now I'm losing track of where everybody is from. I saw Mr. Van Hollen this morning on television. It was the first I'd heard, Madam Speaker, of his proposal. So I had a chance to go and take a look at it today, and also had a chance to look at the CBO report that was performed on it, and saw some interesting things that I don't know if we've discussed fully here today. It raises taxes by $85 billion over the 10-year window. According to the CBO, it raises spending by almost $80 billion. This is a refrain that I used to hear a lot when I was younger, Madam Speaker. Taxes and spending, raise taxes and increase spending. And I thought it was gone from today's party across the aisle. But evidently here it is, alive and well, in Mr. Van Hollen's substitute offering, raising taxes by $85 billion and raising spending by $80 billion, a net reduction over 10 years of the deficit of $5 billion. It actually increases the deficit by $55 billion in the first year, according to the CBO. It does that, by the way, part and parcel by offering what they call the Buffett rule. The last time I came to this well, I believe the gentleman from Maryland and I had a nice exchange about whether or not my amendment was a gimmick. That was the amendment regarding the President's budget. I seem to remember someone else calling the Buffett rule a gimmick. And in my research coming over here today, I found out that it was, in fact, the President of the United States who called the Buffett rule a gimmick. So I'm wondering now if the President believes that part of the gentleman from Maryland's offering is, in fact, a gimmick, because it encompasses the Buffett rule in its entirety. I compare all of this, Madam Speaker, to the offering that we have before you with our bill. That bill reduces the deficit by at least $237 billion over the same 10 years. Theirs reduces it by $5 billion, raising taxes. Ours reduces the deficit by $237 billion at least, according to the CBO. That's the smallest number the CBO gives us. It also gives us 4 times as much deficit reduction in the first year than does the BCA that it seeks to replace. Again, theirs increases the deficit by $55 billion in the first year, ours decreases it by more than the BCA it seeks to replace. And it does that. Our offering does that, Madam Speaker, without asking anybody to pay more money to the government. People pay enough money to the government. We spend their money improperly. It's not that we don't take enough from them. We take enough money from our citizens. We spend it improperly. So when I finished looking at this, Madam Speaker, I thought to myself, I think it would be great to have this come up for a vote. I'm disappointed that the Rules Committee did not give Mr. Van Hollen the chance to bring it to the floor. It's happened to me before, and for that I'm sympathetic. At the same time, I know that he has a chance to do that still. We're going to finish this debate here in a few minutes, and before we vote, there's going to be a motion to recommit. And the gentleman from Maryland could easily offer his amendment as the motion to recommit. In fact, I would welcome the opportunity to see that debate. I would welcome the opportunity here, 60 days before an election, to have my colleagues across the aisle come over and say, we want to raise your taxes. Would you please re-elect us? I want that on the floor. I'm disappointed the Rules Committee did not bring it. I would love to see if that's really what our colleagues across the aisle stand for. I heard it described by the gentlelady from California a few minutes ago as a better plan. We're doing a disservice by not allowing a vote on this particular bill, because it is not a better plan, and I think the vote here would bear that out, not just on our side of the aisle. It'd be curious to see if that's what our colleagues stand for, Madam Chairwoman, Madam Speaker. More taxes, more spending here 60 days before an election. I encourage folks to support our bill. Our bill cuts spending, lets people keep their money, and still allows us to end the sequester. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish Mr. Mulvaney was more persuasive with his colleagues, because we agree that I wish we had a vote on this, and we're happy to have that debate. In fact, that's what we've been having on the floor today. We heard a lot from our colleagues about the devastating impact of these cuts on defense and other things, and we agree, which is why we think it's appropriate to ask people who earn more than $1 million a year to help contribute a little bit more to our deficit so that we don't have to see these consequences. I now yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler. And
the gentleman is advised from the Speaker that there are 4.5 minutes remaining on his side and 5 minutes remaining on the other side. And the gentleman from New York is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, addressing our debt is a critical long-term goal, but it's not our immediate problem. Right now, our immediate problem is high unemployment, and our economy needs efforts to spur job growth. And the expiration of the Bush-era tax cuts, particularly those targeted toward the middle class, and the start of unparalleled across-the-board $1.2 trillion spending cuts mandated by the Budget Control Act sequestration provision threaten further job growth. Looking just at sequestration, there is rare agreement. Not the President, not the Congress, not anyone ever wanted or expected the sequestration measures to take effect. Why? Because we have a jobs problem, and the spending cuts demanded by sequestration are a huge jobs killer. Republicans argue that this steep cut would risk defense-related jobs, and they're right. According to the Economic Policy Institute, these cuts would kill 1.3 million defense jobs in the first 3 years. But the Republicans completely ignore that the domestic spending cuts will also kill an estimated 1.3 million jobs in the same time frame. Put another way, sequestration will kill 2.6 million American jobs in just 3 years. So we simply must stop the sequestration-mandated spending cuts disaster. But this bill won't do that. This bill mandates draining tens of billions of dollars of federal spending next year, reducing the already draconian domestic spending caps, and doing all this without adding a single dollar of additional revenue. So the outcome is virtually the same. This Republican bill will still kill a couple of million American jobs. Talk about driving off a cliff. Basic economics tells us that during good times, with low unemployment, government should reduce the national debt, but that to support job growth, government must not reduce spending during recessions. Now, when we suffer from high unemployment, the proposed spending cuts, particularly those of the magnitude Republicans are proposing, would be disastrous. When we get to 5% unemployment, then we should start worrying about spending cuts. Right now, jobs are the issue. Madam Speaker, I urge a no vote on H.R. 6365.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
I'll reserve at this point.
Reserves his time. Gentleman from Maryland.
May I ask how much time remains on each side?
Gentleman from Maryland has 3 minutes remaining. The gentleman from New Jersey has 5 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Maryland.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New Jersey.
Are you the last speaker?
I'm the last speaker.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. In
Gentleman
that
from
case,
Maryland.
I yield a minute and a half to the distinguished lady from Texas, Ms. Sheila Jackson-Lee.
Gentlelady from Texas for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much to the ranking member of the Budget Committee, and thank you to Madam Speaker. We rise today to try to bring some logic and sense, because as Americans debate sequestration, they throw their hands up and say, what is that? What is that in the minds of children and the elderly? What does that mean in a real rational way of coming together and saying there are some cuts and there are some revenue enhancers and increase to be able to invest in the American public? In order to create jobs, you expend dollars, you invest, you create in research and development, you help to create opportunities for small businesses, you help to promote manufacturing. That's how you create jobs. But let me tell you what the underlying bill says. This bill will only take effect 1 year later. It has no opportunity, no desire, and no rationale to raise revenue. Every thinking economist says that we must raise revenue in order to reduce the deficit and continue to expend and spend dollars that invest in the American public. Do you want your military families to be on food stamps? Do you want 50 million Americans to suffer food insecurity? Or do you want these Americans to suffer? That is seniors on Meals on Wheels, home care, adult protective services, millions of children, 1/3 of them depending on the social service block grant, child protective services, foster care and child care, or 1 million disabled, respite care and transportation. Or do you want to, as I said, continue the food insecurity for 16 million children? All I can say is that this bill not only kicks the can down the road, it kicks the mountain down the road. Let's vote against this bill. Let's sit down at the table, boost revenue, and invest in the American people. I yield back.
Gentleman from New Jersey. Reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 45 seconds to the gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welch.
45 seconds to the gentleman from Vermont.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have a very serious debt problem in this country. We have a very serious jobs problem in this country. Both of those serious problems are solvable. The impediment is political. This is Exhibit A of a dysfunctional Congress. The super committee failed. This Congress, with the leadership on the Republican side, implemented these sequester cuts. We all know they make no sense from an economic standpoint, but it puts the burden back on us to come up with the balanced approach that every American knows is the only way forward. A balance of revenues, a balance with entitlement reforms, and a Pentagon making a contribution to solve our problems. That is what is going to create jobs, and that is what is going to create fiscal stability. I yield back.
Gentleman from New Jersey. Continues to reserve. The gentleman from Maryland for the remaining 45 seconds.
All right. Thank you. I yield myself the time remaining.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The issue all afternoon has not been whether we should replace the sequester. Yes, we should. The issue has been how we do that. We've heard our Republican colleagues talk about the devastating impact of the sequester on defense and non-defense. We agree. That's why we put forward a plan to replace the sequester in the balanced way that's been recommended by bipartisan groups through a combination of cuts, but also revenues generated by things like closing the tax loopholes for big oil companies. And our Republican colleagues have just doubled down on the position that it's more important to protect tax breaks for big oil companies and very wealthy individuals than it is to protect our investment and spending in defense or other important national priorities. That's what this debate is all about. So I hope we will reject this proposal and adopt a more balanced one. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Time's expired. The gentleman from New Jersey.
And I'll yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I began this day being interviewed by a group of Southern college students, and the primary questions that they asked was, why can't Congress seem to work in a more bipartisan manner, work across the aisle and work with the other chamber? And I had to explain to them what was about to occur here on the floor. that when it comes to one of the most seminal issues that we have to deal with in this country, our fiscal matters and also our defense matters, that this House, led by Republicans, have done everything we possibly could to make sure that this country stands strong fiscally and stands strong in a defense posture as well. And they have reached across the aisle, and we reached across to the Senate in a bipartisan manner to effectuate that. We have passed a budget out of this House only to find that bill go to the Senate, where, as they always say, all good bills go to die, and not have anything come back. We have communicated to the President of the United States that we want to work with him on a budget, only to see his own budget come to the Senate and fail 97-0, and come to this House and fail 414-0, not getting any Democrat or Republican support for that bill as well. We have reached across the aisle. We have tried to work on the fiscal matters and the defense matters when it comes to the sequester. We recognize the devastating impact that this will have on our defense posture in this country. And as other members have already come to the floor, in light of all the past circumstances that have come across this country in the last decade, in the light of the memorial services that we just held, all of us in a bipartisan manner, out on those steps just days ago on September 11th, in light of what has just been in the newspaper in the last couple of days of our embassies being attacked and Americans killed on American soil, we realize the important significance of making sure that we have a strong defense at this point in time. I ask anyone to consider this legislation to vote yes in favor of this legislation, and anyone who would stand and vote no against trying to make sure that we're strong fiscally and trying to make sure that we are strong in a defense posture as well, anyone who would vote no, I would ask them, how do they, when they go through the airport leaving here or coming to Washington, look anyone in uniform in the eye and say that they voted against a bill to make sure that there would not be the defense cuts here? The other side of the aisle has no answer for that. Their only answer today, and as it's been ever since I've been here in Congress, is to say the solution to all problems is what? Raising taxes. As I said before, they want to raise taxes for every $1 in spending cuts. We do not have a revenue problem in this country. We have a spending problem in this country. You know, there's an old saying that goes, if there's a dime left on the table in Washington, someone, primarily from the other side of the aisle, I would suggest, will find a dollar's worth of use for spending it. And I think that's the case here. If they raise the taxes 3-to-1, they will find $30 worth of spending to increase. And as the gentleman from California pointed out, that was the example every single time in the Budget Committee. Every single time they were suggested for spending cuts, they were opposed, and they would always use the same spending cuts to further increases in spending elsewhere. As the gentleman from California makes the reference to spending a dollar every time for what was it, for breath mints, I think it was. Well, quite candidly, after listening to this debate and after listening to the debate continuously in Budget Committee over the years, I always leave there, as I will leave here tonight, with a sour taste in my mouth if the other side of the aisle does not agree to begin to work with us in a bipartisan manner to make sure that this country is strong fiscally, to make sure that this country is strong in a defense posture as well. I would encourage all of my colleagues from both sides of this aisle to vote yea on this legislation. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman from New Jersey yields back, and all time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 778, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The question is on engrossment in third reading of the bill. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it, third reading.
A bill to amend the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985 to replace the sequester established by the Budget Control Act of 2011.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I am opposed.
Gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Van Hollen of Maryland moves to recommit the bill, H.R. 6365, to the Committee on the Budget with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. Strike Sections 3 and 4 and insert the following. Section 3, balanced deficit reduction that protects middle-class tax cuts and requires everyone to pay their fair share. A, conditional elimination of sequestration. Sections 251A7 through 251A11 of the balanced budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985 shall have no force or effect upon enactment of subsequent deficit reduction legislation containing savings over 10 years that meet or exceed the outlay changes that would have resulted from those provisions. B. Requirements of deficit reduction legislation. Deficit reduction legislation enacted pursuant to subsection A shall 1. Require upper-income taxpayers to pay their fair share by instituting a Buffett rule. 2. Extend middle-class tax cuts while allowing components of the tax extensions that benefit upper-income beneficiaries to expire as scheduled under current law. And 3. Include targeted spending cuts.
Does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
I no longer do. I withdraw my point of order.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let's just flash back to a year ago when we were working on the Budget Control Act, and it's, I think, worth reminding everybody